everyone. We are the Group 4, and today we will discuss the Agrarian Reform Program of the Philippines. So let's start our report. I am your reporter number 1, and our topic is pre-Spanish period. Long before the arrival of the Spaniard, unsent Filipinos were living in scattered barangays and ruled by different chieftains. All thought they were living separately, they were similar in many ways. The religion, mode of dressing, house, system of government, and marriage practices and economic activities. In short, they were defined and civilized. They possessed a distinct culture that distinguished from their other race. Taxation. Accent Filipinos start the practice of paying tax. The purpose of paying tax was simple. It was for the protection they received from the datu. The called tax was called buwis. The chieftain's family members were enjoying exception from paying tax. Non-payment of tax was already punished during the period. Alliance. Like community of nations, alliance among barangays were formed. The purpose of forming alliance was the trade, peace, and natural protection. An alliance was sealed through blood compact, sanduguan, to ensure conformity, sincerity, and commitment of the chieftains. Ornaments. The native were ornaments made of gold and precious stones. Women, including men, wore armlets, leglets, bracelets, gold rings, and earrings. Putting tattoos in their body was practiced. Education. To transmit knowledge, it was acquired through observation, imitation, and practice. There was no formal education during the pre-Spanish period. Children were taught to read and write by their parents. It was fair to say that they were literate. And that's all about the pre-Spanish.
Our next topic is Spanish period. The Spanish ruled the Philippines for 300 years under this condition, continually harassed by Chinese pirates, by the Moros, Mohammedans from Mindanao and Sulu, by the Dutch, the English wanted to take the possession of the island, and finally by the frequent revolts on the part of the natives. When European traders, in search for a new route to Spice Island, stumbled into the Philippine archipelago in 1521, they found the people living in the comparatively high state of civilization. The natives dwelt on houses made of bamboo and palm leaves and were properly attired at all times. They cultivated rice, which was their staple food, fished the extensive waters around them, and grew many kinds of drinks, which they were very fond of. The woman's position in society was high. Tribal laws and customs recognized her equality with the men in many respects. The people practiced monogamy in general. Codes of law governed their conduct. Punishment with varying degrees of severity were meted out to culprits whose offense to try to public court presides over the chief. Spain's foremost aim in the Philippines was to spread their religion. For their purpose, thousands of Catholic missionaries belonging to various orders came to Philippines. The contribution of this mission worked towards the advancement of education, culture, and architecture in general was enormous, although in later the variants came to considered as opponents of the enlightenment of the people. It was also this point when the Spanish missionaries tried to eliminate the ancient literature of Filipinos. Because of destruction of ancient writings in their eagerness to erase the previous cultural records of the Philippines, only the orally transmitted literature has survived. With the rising influence of the Catholic Church in the Philippines, there began the contention for power between the religious and civil authorities, which proved harmful of the Filipinos. Each camp caused of each camp caused the other of oppressing the people in the conflict. The progress of the nation was retarded because the Spanish spent much time and energy in quarreling among themselves instead of governing. The Spaniards conquered the Philippines in 333 years. No unity, no proper government, divided tribes. Those are some reason of why Spanish easily conquered our land. Results of this were adopted their culture, tradition, and even their languages, which we use until today. The Spanish took advantage of the already divided of people in the Philippines and easily dominated by them. When Filipino tribe was planning to have revolution, the Spanish would send another group of Filipino tribes to conquer their fellow Filipinos, which results of creating a stronger sense of division. If the Spaniards did not colonize our country, we cannot have our religion today, the Christianity. We all know that they were the one who presented our today's religion, even they forced the Filipinos before. But still we adopted it and devoted with our strong faith due to their power, the Spaniards. They become abused to the Indians, which they discriminate in their own land. This resulted to the revolution of the Filipinos. The Spanish showed how advanced and strong they are in terms of technology and how they handle a war.
The American period. The United States of America took possession of the Philippines following the Spanish-American War in 1898, and after putting down the subsequent, the Taft Commission viewed economic development as one of its top 3 goals. In 1901, 93% of the island's land area was held by the government and policy so that a good portion could be sold off to American investors. Instead, the United States Congress, influenced by agricultural interests that did not want competition from the Philippines, in the 1902 Land Act set a limit of 16 hectares of land to be sold or leased to American individuals and 1,024 hectares to American corporations. This and downturn in the investment environment discouraged the foreign-owned plantations common in British Malaya, the Dutch East Indies, and French Indochina. Further, the U.S. federal government faced the problem of much the private land begins owned by the Roman Catholic Church and controlled by Spanish clerics. The American government, officially secular, hostile to continued Spanish control of much of the land of the now American colony, and long hostile to Catholics, negotiated and settlement with the church handling over its land. Philippine situation during the American period. Most farmers were landless. Political and social unrest, realizing that there was so much fixed, the Americans decided to pass several land policies. Philippine Bill of 1902 provided regulations on the disposal of public lands wherein a private individual can own 16 hectares of land while the corporate land holdings can avail 1,024 hectares. This also gave the rights to the Americans to own agricultural lands. This program allowed an enterprising tenant to acquire a farm of at least 16 hectares to cultivate. Homestead program of 1903 introduced only in some parts of Mindanao and northern Luzon. First Public Land Act, Act 926, provided rules and regulations for selling and leasing portions of the public domain, completing defective Spanish land titles, cancelling and confirming Spanish concessions act during American period, Second Public Act of 1919, Act 2874, limits the use of agricultural lands to Filipinos, Americans, and citizens of other countries. Act 141, amended Act 2874, a temporary provision of equality and corporations. Prior Land Act Act 1120 provided the administrative and temporary leasing and selling of prior lands to its Tillers' Rights Share Tenancy Act of 1933. Act 4054, first legislation regulating the relationship of landlord and tenants, and the first law of legalized a 50-50 gap sharing arrangement. Sugarcane Tenancy Contracts of 1933, Act 4113, regulated the relationship of landlord and tenants in the sugarcane fields and required tenancy contracts on land planted to sugarcane. Situation left by the Americans. Did these land policies help the farmer situation? No. It is further worsened the land ownership situation, wherein there was no limit on the size of land holdings one could possess. Land holdings were once again concentrated in the hands of fewer individuals who can afford to buy, register, and acquire fixed titles of their properties. Hence, more lands were placed under tenancy. How did the present groups react to this situation? There were widespread peasant uprisings headed by the earned peasants groups known as Colorum Sacdalista of Luzon and Northeastern Mindanao respectively. This uprising resulted to social disorder in 1920s and 1930s. Hence, more militant peasants and workers organizations banded together for more collective action against the abuses of landlords and unjust land ownership situation. That gave birth to the Community Party of the Philippines.
Commonwealth period. What is Commonwealth period? The Philippine Commonwealth was the name of the Philippines when it was still controlled. Commonwealth period. What is Commonwealth period? The Philippine Commonwealth was the name of the Philippines when it was still controlled by the United States. Manuel L. Quezon was the first Filipino head and an elected government in the Philippines. Government for the Filipinos. President Manuel L. Quezon exposed the social justice program to arrest the increasing social unrest in Central Luzon. Significant legislation enacted during Commonwealth period. 1935 Constitution. The promotion of social justice to ensure the well-being and economic security of all people should be the concern of the state. Commonwealth Act No. 178. An amendment to Tenancy Act No. 4045, November 13, 1936, provided for certain controls in the landlord-tenant relationship. National Rice and Corn Corporation established the price of rice and corn, thereby helped the poor tenants as well as consumers. Commonwealth Act No. 461, 1937 specified reasons for the dismissal of tenants and only with the approval of the Tenancy Division of the Department of Justice. Rural Program Administration, created March 2, 1939, provide the purchase and lease of haciendas, industrial, and lease to the tenants. Commonwealth Act No. 441, enacted on June 3, 1939, created the National Settlement Administration with a capital stock of 20 million. Rice Share Tenancy Act of 1932. The purpose of this act was to regulate the share tenancy contracts by establishing minimum standards. Primarily, the act for better tenant-landlord relationship, the 50-50 sharing of the crop, regulation of interest, 10% per agricultural year, and a safeguard against arbitrary dismissal by the landlord. The major flaw of this law was that it could be used only when the majority of municipal councils in the province petitioned for it. In 1936, this act was relative and not absolute. Consequently, it was never carried out in spite of its good intention. In fact, by 1939, thousands of peasants in Central Luzon were being threatened with wholesale eviction. By the early 1940s, thousands of tenants in Central Luzon were ejected from their farmlands and the rural conflict was more active than ever. The Commonwealth of the Philippines was the administrative body that governed the Philippines from 1935 to 1946, aside from a period of exile in the Second World War from 1942 to 1945 when Japan occupied the country. During the Commonwealth period, tenant farmers held grievance, often rooted debt caused by the sharecropping system, as well as by the dramatic increase of population, which added economic pressure to the tenant farmers' families. As a result, an agrarian reform program was initiated by the Commonwealth. How long did the Philippines experience the Commonwealth period? Under the tidings MacDuffie Law, the Philippines would establish a government to be known as the Philippine Commonwealth, which would steer the Philippines through a 10-year transition period. The Philippine Commonwealth government was forced out of the country from 1942-1945. When the Philippines was under Japanese control in 1946, the Philippine Commonwealth ended when the Third Philippines Republic began.
Japanese occupation. The Japanese occupation of the Philippines occurred between 1942 and 1945, when Imperial Japan occupied the Commonwealth of the Philippines during World War II. The invasion of the Philippines started on 8 December 1941, 10 hours after the attack on Pearl Harbor, as at Pearl Harbor, American aircraft were severely damaged in the initial Japanese attack. Lacking air covered American Asiatic Fleet in the Philippines, withdrew to Java on 12 December 1941. General Douglas MacArthur was ordered out, leaving his men at Corridor on the night of 11 March 1942 for Australia. 4,000 kilometers away, the 76,000 starving and sick American and Filipino defenders in Bataan surrendered on 9 April 1942 and were forced to endure the infamous Bataan Death March, on which 7,000 to 10,000 died or were murdered. The 13,000 survivors on Corregidor surrendered on 6 May. Japan occupied the Philippines for over 3 years until the surrender of Japan, a highly effective campaign by Philippine resistance forces controlled 60% of the islands, mostly jungle and mountains areas. MacArthur supplied them by submarine and sent reinforcements and officers. During World War II, on December 8, 1941, Japan invaded the Philippines. Clark Air Base in Pampanga was first attacked, and also Nichols Field outside Manila was attacked. Then on December 22, the Japanese forces landed at the Lingayen Gulf and continued on to Manila. General Douglas MacArthur declared Manila an open city on the advice of Commonwealth President Manuel L. Quezon to avoid its destruction. Manila was occupied by the Japanese on January 2, 1942. MacArthur retreated with his troops to Bataan while the Commonwealth government withdrew to Corregidor Island before proceeding to the United States. The joint American and Filipino soldiers in Bataan finally surrendered on April 9, 1942. MacArthur escaped to Corregidor, then proceeded to Australia. The 76,000 captured soldiers were forced to embark on the infamous Death March to a prison camp more than 100 kilometers north. An estimated 10,000 prisoners died due to the thirst, hunger, and exhaustion. Philippine Executive Commission. In accordance the instructions of President Manuel Quezon to George Vargas, the Filipino officials in Manila were told to enter into agreements and compromises with the Japanese to mitigate the sufferings of the people under the ironclad rule of the Japanese. On January 23, 1942, the Philippine Executive Commission was established, with Vargas as chairman. The following was appointed as department heads: Benigno Aquino Sr., Interior Antonio de las Alas, Finance, Jose P. Laurel. Justice, Claro M. Recto. Education, Health and Public Welfare. And Quintin Paredes, Public Works and Communication. Heso Yulo was named Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. The Second Republic. On September 20, 1943, the Calibapi, under the leadership of its Director General Benigno Aquino Sr., held a party convention to elect 54 members of the National Assembly. The assembly was actually made up of 108 members, but half of this number was composed of incumbent governors and city mayors. Jose P. Laurel was elected as President of the Second Republic. The First Republic was Aguinaldo's Malolos Republic, and both Benigno Aquino Sr. and Ramon Avancena as a Vice Presidents. The new Republic was inaugurated on October 14, 1943 on the front steps of the Legislative Building in Manila. The Philippine flag was hosted as the national anthem was played. Meanwhile, the Japanese started using propaganda to gain the trust and confidence of Filipinos who refused to cooperate with them. They hung giant posters and distribute their materials that contains such slogans as "The Philippines belong to the Filipinos." They also used newspapers, movies, and other to publicize the same idea. Promoting Japanese propaganda was one of the main objectives of the Calibapi, but still Japanese failed to gain the trust of the Filipinos. General Douglas MacArthur returns. From Australia, Allied forces slowly advanced toward the Philippines, bombing several Japanese strongholds until they regained control of areas previously occupied by the enemy. The bombings began on September 21, 1944, and barely a month later, on October 20, 1944, the Americans landed triumphantly in Leyte. Once ashore, General Douglas MacArthur said, "I have returned."
Philippine Republic. When the first Philippine Republic was established in 1899, General Emilio Aguinaldo declared in the Malolos Constitution his intention to confiscate large states, especially the so-called Prayer Lands. However, as the Republic was short-lived, Aguinaldo's plan was never implemented. Philippine Republic, the New York Republic. After the establishment of the Philippine independence in 1946, the problem of the land tenure remained become worse in certain areas. Thus, the Congress of the Philippines revised the tenancy law. President Manuel Rojas, 1946 to 1948, enacted the following laws. Republic Act No. 34 established the 70 to 30 sharing arrangement and regulating shared tenancy contracts. Republic Act of 55 provides for a more effective safeguards against arbitrary ejectment of tenants. Dar-e was held as one that could emancipate Filipino farmers from the bondage of tenancy. President Ferdinand Marcos, 1964 to 1986, Proclamation number 1081 on September 21, 1972, ushered the period of new society 5 days after proclamation of martial law. The entire country was proclaimed a land reform area and simultaneously and the Agrarian Reform Program was declared. President Marcos enacted the following laws. Republic Act No. 6389 Code of Agrarian Reform and RA No. 6390 of 1971 created the Department of Agrarian Reform and the Agrarian Reform Special Account Fund. It strengthened the position of farmers and expanded the scope of agrarian reform. President Decree No. 2, September 26, 1972, declared the country under the Land Reform Program. It enjoined all agencies and offices of the government to extend full cooperation and assistance to the DAR. It also activated the Agrarian Reform Coordinating Council. Presidential Decree Number 27, October 21, 1972 restricted land reform scope to tenanted rice and corn lands and set the retention limit at 7 hectares.